So, I've been diagnosed with ADHD and autism, and unlike any other video you'll see, I'm actually going through the diagnosis right now, and I'm just starting to learn how to deal with it. You see, after learning about my diagnosis, the first thing I wanted to do was help myself actually try and get everything under control and learn how I function and learn how I work a lot better than what I have ever done in my entire life. So in this video, I'm going to tell you exactly how I felt before getting diagnosed, and then also what I've done since being diagnosed that's helped me dramatically change my life. So before being diagnosed, I felt a few things, and it was mainly to do with emotional regulation. I would start to feel overwhelmed about the simplest things, or when I knew what I had to do and I just heard something else, it would get me distracted, and I would be so confused and overwhelmed that I wouldn't even know what to do to start actually doing these things I had to do. Some of these are really hard to admit, to be honest. Secondly, I'm all just always being very particular about things. Like I've always liked things a certain way. I always like my rooms set up a certain way. I like things to be put die in their place where they're meant to be. And I know that does sound normal, but for me, it's obsessive. Like it's if it's moved out of that space, even when I'm just using it, I'm anxious that I need to get that back there once I'm finished. But like on the autistic side, like I just felt like I would do things and I would feel crazy tired after. Like I'd feel overwhelmingly tired, like especially after a work day or after things that are very mentally taxing. Because anybody that's got ADHD, they know that it's not just doing a certain thing, it's the strategy that you come up with in your mind that you have to do in order to get somewhere. You know, like Google Maps or whatever is like a genius thing because it makes you actually look at it and go, okay, if I go at that time of day, it's going to take this amount of time, and then I need to go on this road, and this part's normally busy, but not at 12 p.m. It's busy a bit later on, so like I'll go and do it now, and then get there, and then it'll allow me to get back. Like there's like a whole thought process, as you can tell by this example. Like it's really drawn out, and it really does take up a lot of brain power to do the simplest things, to be honest. But yeah, one of the first things that for me that I understood when I got diagnosed was like I had no idea what my capacity limits are in a day. Like how often do I need to take a break? How many things can I typically do in a day? Because when I got asked that by my therapist, I had no idea how to answer that question. So what I've done since then is really just auditing each day and taking regular breaks and seeing what's working. And I'll know that it's working because I'll feel very frustrated and anxious if I'm doing too much. So an example is I was doing a lot of things for 2 days straight. On the third day, I was felt exhausted, but also I didn't have the mental power to go out to social events and things like that. This one is honestly one of the hardest to admit, but I feel as for the most part achieved everything I wanted to achieve in my life in terms of like career goals and things like that. And I'm working towards some right now. But like deep down, I've always sort of felt like unhappy and sad a lot of the time. And in a way, it makes sense, right? If you've got ADHD, typically your dopamine levels are much lower than the typical person. So the brain needs a lot more stimulation. But it's funny, so this one I look back to myself as a kid, and it's funny, every single day I used to get up earlier than I needed to before school, and I would play video games for like an hour or 45 minutes. Hell, even if it was for 30 minutes, I would play it. But then I realised now that that's like what must have gave me that dopamine hit before I went to school for the day. And also, this is another really hard one to admit, and it's the first time I've ever really admitted it. That as I at times have abused like food, and especially junk food, sugary foods, chocolate, things like that, um, to comfort myself when I didn't feel when I felt a certain way. I would use that as a way to sort of escape the problems, but also escaping facing these things that I feel I should have always sort of faced, you know? And it really becomes like an addiction to food or addiction to a specific type of food, and then that becomes another complicated relationship with food because you associate those types of food specifically of going um, back in your corner, back in your hole, so that you're not interrupted by anybody else, and that would be like a sign that you were in that situation, like a comfort. But look, I'm still very early in the journey, right? And that's the thing. I mean, these answers might seem like obvious to other people. Maybe it's not obvious to others. I really hope that it brought you some sort of value because I feel like a lot of the time we see people online who had been diagnosed and then they've kind of dealt with it and then they're sharing you how they dealt with it. I want to share the journey because that's what life is all about, is that journey, right? And if I can provide any value to anybody, then I've won, right? So, but yeah, like couple things I've done to really sort of get help. I mentioned it earlier that getting a therapist that specializes in this ADHD and autistic kind of world because they are been the best help for me ever since I got diagnosed and started doing that therapy. And it's important to remember that therapy doesn't solve everything. You get the tools from therapy to go out and solve it for yourself. And I feel like so far I've done a decent job of actually doing that. Another big one is just be patient with yourself, right? You're learning, you're going through the process, try and be kind to yourself. Because I know that I struggle with that, just being kind to myself. And I find that when I'm understanding and kinder to myself, I'm more open to making changes and actually doing things that are healthy for me. And I felt like I struggled with this for a while, and it's just letting people know that you have these conditions, right? And if you need anything from anyone in particular, then you should let them know about that. I really struggled with this a few months ago, just a few months ago, seriously, where I didn't know how to explain what I needed. Like, honestly, didn't even know what I needed sometimes. It's just like simple things like when you're frustrated and angry or anxious, like you don't want someone to be in your face and hugging you and things like that. You want people to kind of like leave you alone, or at least that's the way I prefer it. But I know like someone, a therapist that I work with, she wants someone to hug her in those situations and hold her, and she feels no comfort in that. So there's a lot of different ways of dealing with it, and I just wanted to share what I'm going through. But yeah, like I say, I hope you found this useful. And if you have ADHD, autism, or just been diagnosed, whatever the case is, I'd love to know down in the comments what you guys think, what you're experiencing. Is it different from mine? Did you learn something new? I'd love to hear from you guys down in the comments. And also, if you don't mind, it really does help out the channel, but subscribe, and it's going to help this message about ADHD and autism and some of the things that I'm going through and have been going through, and it would help me share that with everybody to allow them to take some value from this. But until the next time, peace out, everybody.